So, someone in my comment section recommended I check out SPV3. Now, I've heard about this before. I've seen people like Late Night and the Ackman do videos on it way back when, but I never bothered actually playing it because I had some doubts. And unfortunately, I don't see it in as good a light as other people do. Now, I'll admit, I'm the first one to point out technical flaws and problems with games, because as somebody that makes games myself, it's just ingrained in my brain. You know, I look for the problems. I say the good things show themselves, but the problems are the bits that I can give feedback on. And well, to me at least, SPV3 has a lot of problems. To begin with, let's talk performance. I have a moderately decent PC. You can see the specs on screen now, but I'll read them out anyway. It's a 4790K at 4.4 GHz. 32 gigs of RAM at 1600 MHz, that's DDR3, and a GTX 780 Ti. The rest of it, hard drives and things, don't really matter, but I'm running the game off an SSD, so hard drive bottlenecks shouldn't be a problem. Now, the first thing I noticed when playing the game, I did jump straight into the Silent Cartographer, was the crazy amount of stuttering going on. Now, I had an FPS counter and things were looking good. I was hitting sort of 70, 80 FPS, no problem. But the frame pacing is all over the place. Now, this may be a Halo 1 thing, but I don't really remember it being a Halo 1 thing. Going back and playing the original campaign, the frame pacing is nowhere near as bad. This could have something to do with open source, you know, being intrusive, or it could well just be the maps themselves. Either way, it's a problem because it gives the illusion of an inconsistent frame rate, even when the frame rate is perfectly acceptable. If I'm hitting 70, 80 frames a second, it shouldn't be a problem. Another issue with performance is dipping. Like I said, I was getting a decent frame rate, but in heavy areas, the frame rate absolutely tanks. And this shouldn't happen. There shouldn't be an area of a game where the frame rate dips to the point where it's almost unplayable. I'm talking for 2 or 3 seconds in loading into some of the areas on the Silent Cartographer Evolved. The game would pause for 2 or 3 seconds while that loading screen was there, and that's something I've never experienced in PC Halo. And it's not something I want to experience in PC Halo. I'm running the game off an SSD, there should be no problems with loading things into memory. Either way, I could bang on all day about its performance and how poor it is, but I'm going to chalk most of it up to limitations of the engine. And this is going to be an overarching theme for the video, that I don't think the CE engine is worth the effort. Sure, it was great for its time, sure there have been some fantastic things done in it, but I honestly don't think it's worth the trouble anymore. I mean, it's an antiquated engine. It dates back all the way to the late 90s, early 2000s. Just remember, Halo was in development before the release date, albeit for Mac, so it could well have been a completely different engine, but I somehow doubt that. I assume they retooled the engine for Xbox. Another glaring issue I have with SPV3 is the weapon accuracy. You can't hit the broadside of a frickin' barn with those guns. You're a super soldier, a Spartan, a walking tank. Why on earth are the weapons so inaccurate when they are designed for human military? You should be firing those things like lasers, and I can understand from a gameplay perspective that weapon accuracy, or should I say weapon inaccuracy, needs to be a thing. But the cones of fire, I'm going to use that term as shorthand for the angle in which bullets can fire out of the muzzle of the weapon, seems absolutely ridiculous. I'll be scoped in with a BR aiming at a grunt's head. I'll have the little dot on my reticle to say that I'm aiming at the head. I'll fire, and the bullet completely misses. And it wasn't just once, or twice, or 3 times. It was almost every time I fired the weapons. The BR and the DMR especially. And this to me is a problem, because if I'm aiming at something and I shoot, I expect to hit something. Now, I don't know whether it's an issue with the weapons, or whether it's an issue with the engine, or the sandbox, or the AI, or the hit reg, or whatever. But it seems to me like they've taken the weapon inaccuracy variable. I don't know whether this is a specific variable, but I assume that somewhere in the tags there is a way of determining the maximum and minimum fire cone. And And it feels like they've taken those and cranked them up for the sake of artificial difficulty. Now on to difficulty. The difficulty curve in SPV3 is a mess. There are areas of the game that are ridiculously easy, no problem. And then 2 minutes later, there are areas of the game where you are dying repeatedly, because there are 40 or 50 enemies with brute shots that you can't deal with. You have a rocket hog, for example, in the Silent Cartographer. You may be seeing it on screen at this point. But there's a section where I kept dying over and over and over, because there's brutes with brute shots and turrets and things, and the AI refuses to shoot at them. This may be an issue with the AI and not me, or it's probably just an issue with the fact that I suck, and I'm sure people are going to tell me that I suck. But if I'm playing the map on normal difficulty, which is apparently the lowest difficulty it'll go to, I just played it on the lowest to record, because I figured, it'll be a walk in the park, happy days. And I'm dying multiple times, over and over again in the same place, then there's a bit of a problem. I shudder to think what that's like on Legendary. If I'm getting one shot by a brute shot on normal, am I going to die when the wind blows the wrong way in Legendary? What's up with that? And it's not consistent. If there's one thing Halo's been good for, it's consistency with its difficulties. Normal is generally pretty easy, Heroic is pretty decent if you're playing on your own, and then Legendary is the challenge. And then there are Mythic and Lasso and whatnot, but those are sort of community difficulties. But you generally know what you're getting when you walk into a game on normal or on Legendary or Heroic. But with this, you walk in and the first 5 minutes is fine. And then all of a sudden it becomes Dark Souls-esque, where it punishes you for looking the wrong way. Now, I'm not saying I could do better, I'm not saying I'm a fantastic campaign designer or anything, but there are some glaring issues that, at the end of the day, cause me to not want to play anymore. And as somebody that's a big Halo fan, especially a PC Halo fan, that's a bit of a problem. If you've made a game, or should I say, a set of levels and a set of mods that's so poorly designed that even a die-hard fan doesn't want to play it, then you need to go back and reevaluate what you're actually doing. Because, frankly, I don't think it's a very enjoyable experience. And I'm not talking the gameplay here. I'm not talking the sandbox, I'm not talking about the weapons and the armor abilities and stuff. I couldn't care less. At the end of the day, if I don't want to sprint in a game of Halo, I won't sprint. If I don't want to use armor lock or armor abilities, sure. If you throw weapons in, I'll use them, because weapons are always cool. But I'll play the game how I want to play the game, and if I can't do that, and if I'm being punished for doing that, then there's an inherent issue with the way the game is designed. And I'm going to talk about it like it's a game itself, because that's sort of what it is. It uses the sandbox, but very loosely. Most everything has been redone, retooled, and reworked in order to make things the way the developer intended. And when I say the developer, I mean the developer of the maps, not so much the developer of the original game. All in all, I personally feel that SPV3 is a shame. It could have been so much more. It could have been a fantastic single-player experience to rival the likes of Halo CE Anniversary. It could have done, and it does do, in some aspects, things that I wish Halo would do and take on board. But the polish that it lacks is a major problem to me, because at the end of the day it doesn't feel right. There are some cool mechanics, there are some cool ideas, cool weapons, cool features, and the maps are fantastic as far as playing them goes. Playing the Silent Cartographer like that was a breath of fresh air, and I've played the Silent Cartographer hundreds if not thousands of times. But what I feel that SPV3 could have benefited from the most, and I know this sort of goes against the principle of why SPV3 was designed, but I feel that SPV3 would have been served better by a different engine. Even if they didn't go and use a completely third-party engine. Even if they'd used a custom engine, or if they'd used Halo 2's engine, the experience could have been overall better. I'm not saying the Halo CE engine is bad, but it is old, and it has very, very stark limitations. The fact they've still not been able to get the animations past 30 FPS, with everything else they've managed to do, is a problem. And it would be fixed if they moved to the Halo 2 engine. Or if they were to use a completely third-party engine. If SPV3 had been made as sort of a tribute to the campaign rather than a mod in something like Unity or Unreal Engine 4, sure, there would have been a lot more work involved, but they would have had a lot more control over the experience. And at the end of the day, I feel the experience is lacking. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me, but if you do have any comments, leave them in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, stay classy.